Hola a todos y bienvenidos a otro episodio del Digital Download. Oops. Good afternoon, good morning, and good day, wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's #1 business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we're focusing on how to effectively drive growth through social media marketing with our guest, Leon Wise. Leon is a chartered marketer and fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, bringing a wealth of experience in guiding businesses to leverage social media for tangible results. She works strategically with marketing leaders, provides counsel to owner-managed businesses, and offers tactical support to social media managers. But before we bring Leon let's go around the set and introduce everyone. While we are doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us? We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, and audience participation is highly encouraged. Tim, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Bertrand. Really excited about today's discussion. I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. And just to say, if there's anybody out there that would like to come onto the digital download, then they're more than welcome to approach Bertrand to come on and be part of the process.
My arms are wide open.
There you see, Bertrand's arms are wide open.
Thank you for that. Adam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm Tim's business partner. And when you were introducing the show today, Bertrand, in Spanish, I thought you've introduced it in English and French, obviously, and Spanish and German and Italian as well. I'm looking forward to you introducing it, A, in Latin, for old timers like myself, and B, in Esperanto, in by virtue of trying to be as inclusive as possible.
I'll work on that. Thank you. That's an interesting challenge, by the way. Richard.
Oh, hi. Yes, Richard Jones. I'm an industry veteran, but an enthusiastic newbie to social selling. I come from a cybersecurity and compliance background, and I'm delighted to be part of this esteemed panel.
Excellent. Thank you. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Leon Wise. In a digital world filled with noise, Leon provides clarity on the tactics and approaches that truly fuel business growth using social media. Let's bring her on. Leon, good afternoon and welcome.
Hi.
And Leon, let's start with you telling us a little bit about you, your background, and how you and what led you where you are today.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's good to join you. And as I was backstage, I was just laughing at the request for Esperanto because before you all joined us, I was just saying a blue sky update around new languages includes Welsh, Scottish Gaelic and Esperanto. So you were very topical with that. I don't know if you're aware. So I should say, keeping up to date with what's happening in the world of social media is something I do daily. It's part of my role as a consultant, as an advisor, as a researcher on this topic. And I spend a lot of time doing that, but I also appreciate that I have the time to do that in my position as kind of, an independent person working in this field. And I've been working in marketing for over 25 years, started off working in advertising agencies, moved client side, running my own consultancy, and now training business for 15 years. And social media has absolutely become my specialism from the work I do, the writing I do, and the research area as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So let's kick this show off, Leon, with a foundational question. What are the fundamental elements of social media marketing that align with and drive business growth?
Okay, there's a few things to unpack, as there always is in questions, and fundamentals is one of the things I really like to focus on. Going back to the basics of marketing. When I first studied marketing and business studies, social media didn't exist. It was marketing in its purest form. And I think those fundamentals are still absolutely relevant today, whether that's understanding your audience, what are you looking to achieve, all of those kind of basics apply. And then you add the social media channels on top of it. I think when it comes to growth, there's something that's really important to think about, because actually a book, subtle plug here, similar to Tim having his books in the background, my book that was published by Bloomsbury last year is called Smart Social Media Marketing: How to Grow Your Business with Social Media Marketing. And it very much focuses at the beginning on, like, what does growth mean? Because we might immediately think that growth is financial and numbers, and very often it is, but there is other ways to grow, whether that's through people, through additional products and services, personal development growth as well. So I think we take it a step back and say, what is growth and what are we looking to achieve? And then make sure that we have those fundamentals in place about our business, the products and services, the challenges we're solving, and who we're solving it for.
Okay. Excellent. So we need to be clear on our growth objectives. That's clear.
Mm.
And then what are the elements of social marketing that you can then leverage?
Yeah, you've got to know where you're starting and where you want to aim to get. Otherwise, you are playing in that noise and you're contributing to that noise. So we're doing this for business. We're not talking today and in this context around our use of TikTok to be entertained in the evening, or Facebook to keep up with friends and family. This is very much like business focused. So we have to be that focused to be able to get the cut through.
So how do you feel social media plays? So lots of marketing channels are currently facing diminishing results. We're all recipients of this from a consumer perspective. Whether or not you're riding on the underground surrounded by posters for various things, people trying to sell you things, or sitting in the car behind a bus, or listening to the radio or TV or magazines, or the adverts have become wallpaper. Emails have largely become wallpaper as well. Where once upon a time you would have got 2 or 3 emails a day, now you get 20 or 30 or 200 or 300 emails even a day. And as a result of that, obviously it's very easy to throw the good stuff out alongside the bad stuff, because you're tuning it out. So how should a business avoid their social media efforts going into that same pot where it's just another post from somebody telling me something that I either already know or have no interest in?
It's a great question, and there's so many things again in there, because I started off in a very traditional background. I worked in the postal direct mail industry for a number of years. I remember my first posters that were on London Underground, and going there with a camera and waiting to be able to take pictures to record that it was there. And I think those channels are actually still very much alive. They're being used. If we look at the campaigns that are being run, there are a lot for online services and e-commerce and software tools as well. So I don't think they are dead, and all these things are actually working together for all the steps of the funnel, from awareness through to consideration. And I would argue that email is probably one of the better places to convert. Social media is probably better for awareness. How do we cut through all of this? It comes back to understanding our audience and what they need to know from us, and respecting their time, I think, in the inbox. I also think we've got a role as consumers to be discerning and not complain so much about things, and go, do you know what? I'm in control of this. I can unsubscribe. I can unfollow people. I can skip the ads on TV. So we actually need to take control of that and set our information filters, which we know people are increasingly doing around news and what else is going on. So we can focus on social media if we are focused.
So I saw something
Yeah.
this week which I thought was quite interesting, Luann, which was a video from Rand Fishkin. It's actually a month old.
Right.
But what he does is he compares the way things were measured in 2015 with the way things should be measured in 2025. So in 2015, he talks about how important it was about what you did was you drove people to the website. It was about you did something to do with SEO. People were going to Google. You drove people to the website. You then tried to get them to sign up with a newsletter or something like that. And then you took them through a filter to basically convert them to sales. Now he's saying in 2025 is that, and it's quite interesting because, you know, he's an SEO expert, if not probably one of the best SEO experts in the world. He says that things have changed. And now what we need to be doing is actually driving people to not our website, but to social media, because that's where they are. Which is what we're doing is that we're seeing that people are actually going onto social media and searching. Now he says that people search for brands. I don't think they do. I think people search for business problems. And then what happens is that that's converting to sales. I mean, it's interesting to see that he's actually saying in 10 years we've actually or should be changing the way that we market. What's your view?
I think measurement is tricky. It's got more complicated, you know, dare we say, you know, back in the day when I did start in direct mail, you were focused on, you knew industry response rates, you had previous data, so you knew how many to mail to get the expected response and the conversion you needed. The measurements felt a lot simpler. Then you could do the numbers. Measurement is important. The challenge alongside that is now we've got multi-attribution, multi-channel, and so much more data to sift through to find out what it is that we need to know. And everything is kind of working together. So it's all got a lot more complex and a lot more layered as well. I think I would like to strip it back to those fundamentals and say, ultimately, you need to think about within your business, what do you need to measure as your end goals, but also what I would call like the stepping stone measurements that are going to help you keep on track. So whether that's how well a social media post does in terms of engagement, because you get to know what resonates with people, that helps you do more of that to drive them along, versus your big end goals in terms of revenue and, you know, all the other factors that you might be looking at. When it comes to search on social, I think this is absolutely interesting because it means that social media, and hopefully, you know, we know that it was, anyone working in it knows that it has been, and in some organizations still is, that end point that we're doing a campaign, we've done a press release, this has happened, but someone popped it on social, and then it comes at the end of the chain. I'm now using the trends and the insights around social search being really important. There was some data I've read this week from GWI around different generations and their use of search, and that now that's actually split 3 ways: search engines, social search, and AI search.
Yeah.
We've got to, you know, put that in the mix as well. And you're right, I think people are using social media for search. The data says it is. The data says that in the first 30 seconds of opening TikTok, many of its users go straight to the magnifying glass rather than the scroll. So they are searching, whether it's intentionally or just scrolling. So we need to think about social media in that format as well. I still think we've got mixtures of intent in terms of, if we ask our device, I won't say the name, who's behind me, a question versus asking Google a question versus asking ChatGPT a question. I think it's different on different platforms, but I think social media has very much got a role to play in that world of brand discovery and awareness now, so much more than it's a place to amplify content.
Okay, so as a business, what are the pitfalls that I may encounter in not knowing everything you just said, especially search, AI, social search, etc. On top of the classic search. how should I approach this? I mean, what are the mistakes I should not make, basically?
Well, I think there is no rule book, but there's always things that everyone can do better to make incremental improvements in what they're doing. And part of that is testing and learning and looking at what's happening. But fundamentally, I think we could group pitfalls into two levels. I think there's a big pitfall at like the tactical level, the people that are doing the day-to-day work and implementing. I think we've also got a level at leadership where perhaps there's not the level of understanding and there's a gap between those two, and we need to educate upwards and bring the understanding together as well. As an example, at the leadership level, there's still conversations going on around how many likes did we get and how many followers have we had. That's not a leadership conversation. And at the same time, those implementing are giving those answers back as well, rather than thinking about what the impact is of something or how that's contributed to the big picture strategic vision and overall goals, and maybe pulled out some really valuable insights from what competitors are doing or customer feedback and insights. So I'd say biggest pitfall is we're still focusing on the easy stuff that we think it is about, rather than treating it in perhaps a deeper way, which we would have done with other channels. You know, we wouldn't have stood and had these conversations about fax machine campaigns, which I've done in my career, or print, things like that. So big picture pitfalls. But I also think we've got some pitfalls at a tactical level where, Tim, I know that you will be seeing these and scrolling past them all the time, like just the myths and the hack busting, and if you do this at this time and then within 30 seconds you do this and then you do that. No matter what training I do, there is always a question in the Q&A around something really tactical around what's the best time to post, or how many posts do I need to do, or do I need to tag people in because I've heard that. And I think all of that is just distracting from being strategic and focused on those endpoints and those goals. So we need to change our thinking at all levels.
Lorraine, I'm actually standing on one leg because I saw an article that if you do a restream on one leg, then you get better reach.
It wouldn't surprise me. It's almost like sometimes I do believe that those that are creating these ideas, whether they're justified or not, are the best marketers because everyone seems to know about them.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of internal debates about this, and people. In fact, we are as a show, we are friends with somebody that's a clinical psychologist, and she said humans are hardwired to be lazy. So at the end of the day, why would you walk 5 miles to get water rather than 5 yards to get water? So we always take the easiest course, and I think that's often embedded in all of our behaviors, whether or not we are new to something. So, and it'd be really good if you could tell me what's the best time to post. Well, I don't know, because your audience isn't my audience, or whatever the answer is. Through to even people that are really experienced at this, we think, well, if this does go viral, that would be amazing because my phone will start ringing. And actually, no, it won't, because that's not the way the world works. But we still hold on to that delusion to a greater or lesser extent. But back to your point about kind of the conversations that are going on with the leadership team. Part of the challenge is, you're my marketing department, and you say you're going to bring in a 20% uplift in revenue, and I've got a long buy cycle on my product. It might be 2 years of having conversations with people to convert them to a sale. So it's like we're 2 quarters in. How are you getting on? Well, there's no money yet. Well, there was never going to be any money because it's a 2-year buy cycle. So actually, we do need to potentially give the leadership team those signposts. So this campaign worked better because we got 100 likes rather than 5 likes. The likes in themselves, we can't take those to the bank. We can't say to our investors, we got another 100 likes, so can you give us another £1 million, please? But we can say, well, this is what these are indicative of. And I think that often there's been this big disconnect between marketers talk about impressions and impacts and reach and engagement and all of these things. And leadership don't really know what those mean. They don't know which of those are vanity metrics and which of those are kind of indicative of something. So what should marketers, modern marketers, be saying to the board when they're challenged with, you've been here half a year, where's the money?
I'd be rich if I could actually give you the answer to this
that's,
one, wouldn't I?
that's an easy one.
I'll give it a go. I think, Adam, there's something here that goes back to how we report on social media, particularly with B2B and the B2B cycles. Is it any different from having a telemarketing team and saying, our telemarketing team of 5 did X number of calls this month, and therefore it generated this number of appointments, and no one asks what the end conversion or the lifetime value or what the feedback on those calls was. We're still looking at, in terms of sales and marketing reports, when they get aligned, is very short-term monthly reportings about outputs. And I think until that fundamentally changes, we're going to be doing the same thing with social media and AI tools, no doubt. And the next thing coming along is that our reporting is very short-term, because that's how businesses run, and that's how some members of the leadership team need to think. I think what we need to do fundamentally is challenge the questions we're being asked and talk about boardroom language. And, if we're talking to the sales director, we talk about lead gen. If we're talking to the finance director, we talk about financial impact and investments and business cases. I think the challenge is, particularly with B2B, that it is long term, but we don't report and measure in the same way as we need to. So it's a whole conversation around, this is the role social media can have within an organization. These are the different areas it can impact. This is what we're going to achieve, and this is how we're going to measure it. So challenge things back.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree, and we are great ones for challenging things.
Yes.
I think, as you know, I think though that part of the challenge is that back to that kind of humans are hardwired to be lazy thing. Invariably, pretty much every individual that we talk to within every single organization wants the easy button. They want a quick fix for something which doesn't require them to work any harder or any differently. Yeah. Because that's a very attractive thing. We all bump into people that say, here are the 10 things that you need to do to be successful on social media or email marketing or advertising, whatever it is. And people lap that up because actually you spent 25 years working in this particular region. And now I've got this book which gives anybody that experience bottled, and it's 5 minutes to implement it. So the challenge, and perhaps the economic, the financial challenge for people selling into organizations is that there'll always be somebody that will tell the buyer what they want to hear. So you're sitting down in front of the buyer in the marketing function, but it's equally true of every function in an organization. You sit down in front of the buyer in the marketing function and you say, actually, to make this change, to make this business sustainable, to make it effective, this is a 2-year program of doing things differently, and this is what will happen at the end of it. And then the next person comes through the door, next one through the door is Tim, and he says, well, I can tell you 3 things you need to do of how you can game the algorithm, go viral, and then the phone will start ringing. And the person goes, but actually, I like that answer. Mm-hmm. Now, in everybody's heart, they know that answer isn't the true answer. So how do people, when they're selling into an organization and they're faced with that, you've got the difficult right answer or the easy wrong answer, people want the easy wrong answer, don't they?
Again, I think the thing is, not enough people are challenging things, and whether that's their own nature or the environment they're working in. Like, we might all be challengers. That's our role. It's something that we've learned over time, and people want from us. They want the challenges and the questions, but I don't think everyone is actually doing that in the right way. So they are fulfilling the monthly reports that they've always been asked to do and ticking off the boxes from the myth busting that they've seen. I think fundamentally this isn't about social media anymore or a marketing channel. This is about organizational culture, employee mindset. And actually, you can't just say, we're going to do things differently from tomorrow, or here's a new tool. We've got AI, coming into the mix around that. Fundamentally, this is, again, lifting it up again that this is about an organization, how they operate, how they embrace change, how they want to empower people. And ultimately, I think that's what's going to lead to long-term sustainable growth rather than the day-to-day, box ticking tactics. This is what I've read. Kind of implement it next.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to come back to something you said, Luan, on awareness versus conversion. And because I think to some degree in B2B, we're very much faced with this assumption that my social presence is very much brand awareness. And the relationship to it actually influences my funnel is very weak. And I would love to understand whether, first of all, you face the same with your customers, the same level of understanding with your customers, and if there are any ways in which you've been challenging this view, just to make, to maybe change the assumptions and as you said, change the mindset around this.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges, and maybe go back to the word pitfalls around social media, is that I think many people think that they can achieve everything with one social media post, that they can create awareness about something and introduce their products and services, get people to buy into that, and then sign up and hit the buy button all in one post. And we can't do that. There's no quick wins to this. So we have to be thinking in our content planning, like, who are we trying to communicate with? What do they need to know? What stage of the journey are they at with us? Is this about awareness? The first time they've discovered us because it's come through search? Or is this someone that's been following us for many years and we're now trying to get them to do something different? And I think then it's about what do you mean by conversion? So conversion could be a download from your website so that you're capturing the data, and then you can go into the email marketing nurture funnel, one-to-one conversations. Is it sign up to an event and a webinar? And I would say in that case, social media does work really well if you put the link to the event, get the sign up, post it live on LinkedIn, and follow it up afterwards. That's a different kind of conversion to ultimately getting a sale at some point. I would also say, and it's relevant to this conversation, it's also about building those relationships until the point where you are looking to extend them. You connect with someone, you stay in front of them with your content, and at some point there is an ask, whether that's, can I meet you for a cup of coffee? Can I interview you for this? Could you refer me for something? Can I pop you down for a testimonial? It's going through that journey, the know, like, and trust, but thinking that a conversion doesn't always need to be the ultimate sale. It's, again, that stepping stone towards a deeper level of engagement, and absolutely what Tim's book is about, social selling.
So it's basically measuring how you're progressing your as you said, I like that, the level of relationship with your target, basically.
And then I think it's about adding that impact, isn't it? Like, if I'm doing something, I'll think, how has this impacted me? It's like, I'm going to meet some great people in the next few weeks because I've met them on social media and followed up and built that relationship to the point where there's an ask, and where there's, potentially like a speaking opportunity at a global event. That's a conversion point because it's made a difference in my business. And I think it's about understanding what that means and how you want social media to support that growth. And it's not always about the buy button or the course sales or the book sales.
I mean, one of the things that I find really interesting about, and I was going to say corporates, but actually it's not corporates, it's individuals as well. They have, particularly on LinkedIn, they have a strong sense of what they should be posting, and they stray from what they should be posting, and they see miraculous results, and that doesn't drive a change in behavior. And the vast majority of I would imagine everybody's newsfeed, unless they curate it very carefully, the vast majority of it is people sharing dull corporate posts about product enhancements or the fact that they're appearing at events. And the only people that are engaging with that content are people that are on the payroll of the company that the content is talking about. And I have this sinking feeling that that's reported back to the leadership team as a success. You know, I work for a big corporate. We've got 100,000 staff. I did this post about this event we're appearing at, and I got 20,000 likes on it. Now, all of the 20,000 likes are on the payroll, and therefore none of them are actually going to buy the product, but it doesn't matter because 20,000 people have liked it. So for somebody that's in marketing, that's starting to do some stuff in social, and they're experimenting with different posts. You know, we've got a picture of, here's an event and here's a picture of me at the event, and one of them obviously outperforms the other significantly, even if it's a photo of me. And how do they PR that to their team, the boss, in order that can become the normal mode of operation?
Yeah, again, I think this comes back to reporting, and to take it out of social. Is this any different from going to networking events and someone reporting back that they've been to 3 breakfast events this week and they've handed out X number of business cards and added 4 new people to the CRM? It's kind of the same outputs, numbers, activity, and not identifying, you know, what was the quality of that person that we met? Was it the right event that you went to? How long did it take you? And the cost and expense on that one. You're absolutely right, Adam. If we were to all sit and scroll through our LinkedIn now, it's all like, you should do this and you should do that. And, you know, there's all those pressures around that. A lot of those posts are the noise that we need to filter out, because they'll be same as your inbox, like, you need this many number of leads and, you know, pipeline and everything else. No one ever talks about the conversion or the value or how busy they are. They just talk about, you know, the big metrics that is going to, you know, be your big win and your overnight success. And I think anyone that is going after that should challenge it, to come back to challenge and what they're reading. And if you're getting started in social media, I think it's about being very specific about who do you need to learn from and who are the right people to learn from, and what noise do you need to filter out. It is so easy to get distracted and try and, you know, buy the big wins and the big courses and, you know, the overnight success, but there isn't any quick wins. There's people to learn from, but you've got to be focused. And I think there's also the challenge of around, you're right, the content that is being put out there, it's becoming an echo chamber. People are copying other people because they see the big numbers on it or the posts, and actually when you dive into the comments, they're not valuable comments. They're like, hey bestie, and you're amazing, and that's hot. And it's like, I'd rather have no comments than like comments that don't add any value to me or my audience or my network and are never going to convert into anything. So I think it's about focusing on quality, what we're trying to achieve. And again, we've got to change how we report and talk about that internally. I don't care about the big numbers. I care about, you know, what it ultimately means to a business.
Joanne, it strikes me that you mentioned it earlier on, that the leadership should be asking tough questions of those who are, you know, in charge of social media. You know, it's almost as if leadership doesn't really understand the potential of what's there, and consequently it's dancing to the tune of those who are, you know, pumping out content and patting themselves on the back because they've got a lot of likes and shares.
But there's one argument that, yes, it would be great if leadership did have a greater understanding of social, but at the same time, it is one of our channels. Do they understand SEO and pay-per-click? Do they understand how to buy print and, you know, press schedules or things like that? Is it almost because it is so in the public domain that we expect everyone knows about it and learns about it? Or is it just that the leadership team should set the objectives and then trust their marketers to deliver on it, but have more relevant conversations that are away from the likes and things like that? I'm sure that, you know, we don't all report on number of clicks or what are our top search words or things like that. Social just seems to be put into a different box within organisations, and I don't think it's doing anyone any favours to be doing that.
Yeah, I guess it's the social it's lumped in with
Yeah.
social media that is considered to be more trivial. So I guess that's part of the problem.
And I think part of the problem that I see a lot in organisations, and I don't know if any of you see it or do it yourself, is because social media is also a personal thing about how we're entertained. It's on our phones, how we communicate with friends and family. It's actually very difficult for people to separate how they use it personally, what their kids are doing, what their friends and family are doing, and then go, oh, I'm now doing this for work. It's different. I need my, we're still the same person, but again, it comes back to that employee mindset of how I use Facebook for work, for groups and communities and conversations is different to how I will post on my personal profile with my friends and family.
Well, I guess you could contrast it with the telephone and using the telephone to call your mates. That's considered bad form, but it was the same tool that you were using to call your customers, wasn't it? So there's parallels there, I think.
Yeah, but I don't know. Not everyone uses a telephone anymore, and we schedule calls in different ways, don't we? So I think part of this is, we can connect use of social media and how that's changed to the smartphone and the fact that we've got the devices in our pocket constantly. And I think we use them less and less for phone calls. But it was about phone calls are much more one-to-one conversations. You knew who you were talking to, whereas social media, I think, perhaps doesn't feel so one-to-one when you're putting content out there.
So this is a bit of an existential question. So we believe the only thing that matters is social media. We believe the only thing that matters is social media. We believe that all other comms channels are of their legacy channels that don't really deliver. They certainly don't deliver with the same mechanism that they used to years ago. And the fundamental challenge that certainly I see when I look out into the business world is that everything is homogenized. So there are 100 CRM vendors. There are 500 car manufacturers. All of them make a product which is perfectly fit for purpose. I think back in the end of the last millennium, JD Power did a survey and they concluded that there's no such thing as a bad car anymore. So whether you're buying a Skoda or a Rolls Royce, not that those are opposite ends of the spectrum necessarily, but it doesn't matter what you buy, the expectation is that it will always start, it will do 35 miles per gallon, it will be comfortable and quiet, it will have all the tech in it. They're all the same thing, basically. And yet every one of these organizations, whether it's a CRM vendor or a car company or a facilities management company, they'll claim that their product is best. And consequently, the words don't mean anything anymore. There's no trust between you and the company. It may be between you and the brand. You might choose Apple as opposed to Samsung, but there's no trust between you and the company. But there is trust between you and people. And that's what we believe social media enables. It enables me to grow my following where people who like my particular brand and style of conversation and humor and whatever are drawn to me and then are happier doing business with me. So if that's a reality rather than just a delusion on my part, how long before all of these other things fade out? We used to have people, snake oil salesmen, literally people selling stuff from the back of the trucks, driving around the rural areas saying, this will cure, you drink this and it cures your bad stomach, you rub it on and it cures your rash. That was the way things used to be done. How long before pick whatever broadcast channel you like is consigned to that bin? Or is there a future for those things? Is there a future for TV advertising and radio and print and all of these other things?
I think there's some marketing channels that will disappear at some point. For example, as I said, back in my agency days, I did many fax machine campaigns to corporates to sell health club memberships at the time, literally spent hours on a fax machine and doing campaigns. Obviously, they're not a channel anymore, so things will change. But I think things need to become more personalized. And you're saying, a car does the same job for everyone, but that's not true, because for some people, a car is, is a hobby, is a toy, is what people might, go traveling in weekends. For some, it's a workhorse. For some, it's a family taxi. So, and that influences our choice. So I think it's hard to put everything into a box and say that cars are the same, and what you might choose as a car will be very different to me. My husband would spend hours researching a car and all the technicals. I would walk into a showroom, and I have done it, and go, that looks nice, I'd like that one, please. So, buying decisions, but I did do that. Buying decisions, buying journeys are all completely different, and people have different purposes for them. And even if some organizations are focused on buying into individuals, there are still some organizations where we don't know the individuals, but we still love the brand. Apple, for example, MailChimp email marketing software. I don't know any individuals at those, but I still would use the brand and follow the brand and engage with the brand. So maybe there's actually something coming up in the future of how do we intersect companies, brands, and individuals, so that, there's risks, pros and cons for both. Yes, there has been a shift, but maybe that's the bigger challenge of who do we engage with, who do we buy from, and for what purposes, rather than, I don't think we can go mass market again and just have one car that fits everyone.
Yes. I mean, I think that all of these questions are really important questions to challenge ourselves with, because I think that, certainly when we look at the sales functions within organizations, we see a lot of, even if it's not articulated in quite this way, a lot of the kind of, well, that's just how it is kind of attitude. And it strikes us that that's the mindset that people have just before their entire world gets disrupted by somebody that comes in saying, well, I haven't got any of that legacy stuff, I'm going to do stuff differently in a more efficient way. And I think that challenging these things, just because it's always, there's always been TV, doesn't mean that there will always be TV, or that TV advertising is relevant. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but you need to be asking the question to determine whether or not this thing still has some sort of relevance to you and the business and the world.
I think it's important to question, like, why you're doing things and should you continue doing them. And if I can say that there's anything that Elon Musk has done for the world of social media, is he has actually challenged people to say, is Twitter, X, still the right platform to be on? Or our audience there, do the values align with what we want to do? Does it have all the features and benefits that I need it to? And stop doing what we've always done, because that's how we've always done it. And I think there's been a real danger in the past of going, we can't go to that we have to keep going to this trade show because we've done it for 20 years, and what will everyone think if we're not there? Strategy is choosing what not to do as well as choosing what to do. But ultimately, I'll come back, because this is my area of research that I'm starting to explore, is organizational culture and mindset, and all the change management and adoption models, and what that means.
And on that, you had something to say, Adam. No,
I was just going to say that one of the things that we see when we work with teams and we train them, what we see is one of the biggest barometers for whether or not the program is going to be successful is whether the leader buys into the program, and more importantly, does what we say they need to do. Because it's kind of like, if you smoke and you say to your children, don't smoke, they will smoke because they model your behavior, not what you say. And we see exactly the same thing in sales teams, sales leaders that say, yeah, I buy this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to invest my time and effort in making this a success for me. It not only shows the way, but it also gives permission for other people to do it. So organizational change is the biggest driver, and also the most difficult thing to change, isn't it?
It's not a quick win, is it? And it's one of the first questions I'll ask with clients when I'm starting to explore a project of who's sponsoring this, what's their attitude and their understanding of this within the organization. And if they don't show up to the first meeting, they don't want to see the presentation, it's never gonna get pushed through or get buy-in or get results. And you can't expect people on the metaphorical, shop floor to implement this stuff if it hasn't got drive and direction from the top.
Absolutely.
A comment from the audience, and then I'll raise my question, which coming from Ben Smith. Trust is the core funnel of the network tribe. Trust is earned by contributing in a genuine way to the network. Certain nodes in the network act as gatekeepers. They can help amplify your presence. It's a long game where reliability and credibility eventually trumps content. So if you want to be interesting, be interested. That's a good punchline. I'd like to bring the growth topic to talent. Because we talked a lot about growth, and growth oftentimes goes with hiring or attracting at least the right talents. Do you see in your practice any impact of your social media marketing on talent acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done some work alongside HR leaders and this topic as well. And I think there's two things here. There is retention. So ensuring your organization are, know what's going on and they're supportive and engaging. And it comes back to Adam, your point about individuals. If they are representing the organization, that is really key, but also acquisition as well. A lot of social media content, and when I'm working with organizations, is not just here's our products and services and our launches and our events, but it's the behind the scenes. It is the know, like, and trust. It's the employee brand content. So rounds of promotions are happening within legal services at the moment, aligning with the financial year. That's great content to see that organizations are rewarding their staff and promoting them and that they feel valued. Or the CSR activity, who's doing London marathons, who's doing charity bake sales and, odd socks days within an organization. That is great and relatively easy social media content, but it's also giving people insights into what it's like to work with you within the organization, as a client, as a supplier. So all of those are really important. Engagement, content, trust signals, and actually that, what I would call that stepping stone content. People will engage with that because it's easy for them. Some content on social media that we might be being asked to be put out at a corporate level is really heavy stuff and requires opinions and insights. And while it gets the lurkers and the offline conversations, it won't get so much visible engagement online because either people aren't comfortable sharing, there's a bit of fear around it, they don't want to get out of their depth, they don't feel that they should be engaging with that content because of how their organization perhaps is structured to be seen to do with that. So absolutely, the employer brand acquisition, retention, that is a really valuable way of using social media. And if I go really tactical, that's a really great way for some organizations to be thinking about using TikTok to attract younger generations, whether it's your trainees or your graduates. Office humor, office life, who works there, what it's like behind the scenes. I would say that's a really key opportunity for social media, away from perhaps the broadcast, the corporate selling stuff that we might think it's about.
It's interesting that in the work that I do with LinkedIn, that's actually what you've just described for TikTok. Actually, LinkedIn, one part of that.
Yeah.
And their recommendations are for, they work with, there's a LinkedIn team that actually works with senior leaders about putting out company reports, but there also is a team that works there in terms of helping, how can we get the intern to show people what it's like to work there every day. And there's some famous one that's gone viral on LinkedIn rather than on TikTok.
Since we are on that topic, are there any innovative strategies that come to your mind, or that you see, trends that you see emerging and that businesses should be watching carefully?
Trends, or there's two ways of looking at this. Trends, yes, what we're seeing is user behaviors are shifting, social search, AI search, but much more about private sharing. Instagram talks a lot about sends and shares with friends versus public commenting. So I probably see more activity go on in closed communities and WhatsApp groups rather than in the public domain, which could come back to, you know, the way people think that they should be using LinkedIn. But in terms of features, something that I'm watching and quite a fan of is LinkedIn's new features around newsletters, being able to promote newsletters as an ad, but also their thought leadership ad content, which comes back to Adam, that connection between brand and individuals, that a company page can promote an individual's piece of content, whether that's an employee, whether it's an influencer or an event speaker. But again, being able to kind of tie those two things together. So for me, the LinkedIn ads not just being about ads to try a piece of software or promote an event, but being about the thought leadership content and newsletter, longer form content as well. And in terms of trends, we can't escape that everything's pushing us towards video, even LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
It's interesting. The LinkedIn video thing is interesting because they always say that you need to be doing it, but they don't tell you how many people are consuming it.
Well, I think that the challenge with LinkedIn, you know, when it first came out on the mobile app, was you couldn't search. So you couldn't just see the content from people you were connected to or search in any way. It was it's just a scroll, isn't it? And
yeah,
it's not quite there in terms of functionality.
I was on a call with LinkedIn, and there was a discussion, and the people had the discussion were my age,
right.
Generation, and we all said, "Oh, we don't watch video on LinkedIn." And it was just it was just really interesting where we had the LinkedIn going, you need to do this, and LinkedIn posts are up 30%, and we're going, we don't watch it.
Yeah.
Who watches it? But they were of my generation.
I think the one thing I like about some LinkedIn video content is those people that do it often and you're almost looking out for it. So you know that a certain person does a LinkedIn video update every Tuesday morning, and I'm waiting for it because I've engaged with it a few times. So it's that kind of serial content, back to the days of TV, versus kind of, oh, there's a video, I've never seen this person before, I don't know who they are, what's going on. It's part of that engagement.
Because you know, like, and trust them, you have a different relationship with that content, don't you? Because as you said, you're looking out for it.
Yeah. So it's part of the content program rather than being something in isolation, I think. And also you've got to be really comfortable to do it and spend time doing it. I don't know, some people take longer than others, but it would take me a lot more time to create a video to add to LinkedIn than it would for me to type out an update.
I think with video, it's yes, you've got to be comfortable, and the only way that you can get comfortable is practice.
Keep doing it,
and just keep doing it. And but isn't there's always a fear of us being judged, isn't it? You know, I'm now used to you know, I know that when I put out a post, someone will contact me and tell me there's a typo in it.
Yeah.
And I just live with it, and it's I am, typo is my middle name, and that's the way it is.
Yeah. Everyone's experience on this is different. You know, some people do get trolls. I guess it depends on your own tone of voice and messaging as well. Some people potentially are evoking discussions and conversations around challenging topics, whereas others are doing, I'm speaking at this event and here's an update, which doesn't really require that level of feedback. So yeah, it does take practice, the same as writing posts as well. It's almost a continuum of confidence, isn't it? Like, you start off by putting your profile out there, then you maybe like do some behind the scenes connections, then you do some commenting, then you do a couple of posts, and then you're like, right, I'm going all out on video now because I'm okay with it.
Excellent. That's right. That's the path. I've been going through this as well. So
you're going to start doing some video then, Bertrand?
Sorry?
You're going to start doing some video then, Bertrand?
I've done some videos already, but I've put this on pause. But I'll be back.
On a hard drive, you know.
I'll be back soon. This has been really great. So, where can people learn more? Where can we find you?
You can find me on social media. I am on LinkedIn is probably my primary platform. Also very active on Instagram. Have got profiles on Facebook, Threads, TikTok, X as well, or just Google my name to find my website.
So you've done some work at Warwick University, Luann. What do the students think about you being on TikTok?
I don't have this answer from Warwick, but I do have it from another university, and I won't share it because I was doing a guest lecture about social media, and we were kind of doing hands up around the different platforms of who's on Facebook. It's like, oh no, don't want to be on Facebook. And when I said, you know, are you following me and your lecture on TikTok? They didn't want us to be there. We were it was the wrong context, the wrong generation. But it's how people are using it. So for students studying this, there is again that challenge of you are not your audience. You need to go and be in the places that your audiences are going to be and understand all the different channels as well. But if they're using it for themselves, they don't want their guest lecturers and authors showing up in their feeds when they're trying to shop and travel and things like that.
Okay. Thank you for that, Luann. We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get the show highlights, behind-the-scene insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You may scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of the panelists and to our guests and to our audience, thank you all and see you next time. Thank you, Luann.
Thanks, Luann.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.